Okay, we're live. Hi, everybody. Chuck Holton here, coming to you from Armenia, where we are having a great time on our tour with a bunch of our Hot Zone viewers who came along with me. And we're going to talk to them a little later. Here, everybody say hi. This is our first Hot Zone before a live studio audience. So thank you for being with us. We got a bunch of people on and a bunch of stuff to talk about. There's all kinds of things going on in Israel today and big news, some big stuff happening. So let's get right into it. The first thing I want to start with is kind of the most important one, and that is kind of the topic of the live tonight. And it is just what exactly is going on between Israel and Lebanon up in the north. So as you, I'm sure know, if you've been watching the news at all, they just had, and again, I have to be careful how I say this because of YouTube's crazy rules with their community standards. So if I'm using crazy euphemisms, like instead of somebody died, they took the express train to Smithereen Town or something stupid like that, it's because I don't want to get the video demonetized. So just bear with me on that, all right? Right now, Israel is starting what we call in the military shaping operations for an upcoming invasion into Lebanon. They have already set the stage. They have set the stage diplomatically, set the stage legally inside Israel. They have talked to, we can say reincarnated instead of died. They have updated their war objectives to include returning people to their homes in the north. They have authorized, the war cabinet has authorized Benjamin Netanyahu to give the go-ahead to the IDF without having to come back for further permission. They have set the stage, and they are kinetically shaping the battlefield by what we saw over the last several days with this incredible coup of the Mossad causing all of these electronic devices to do their best impression of a firework. Which is very exciting if it happens to be in your pocket. And so they had been calling it Operation Below the Belt. I see now some people are calling it the Grim Beeper. And so the Grim Beeper operation has been very successful. As a matter of fact, all of these electronic devices that have been spontaneously combusting inside Lebanon have made it so that Hezbollah is not just Hezbollah, everybody in Lebanon is absolutely terrified of what might happen if they step on a scale, use their toaster, open their refrigerator, get in their car. Can you imagine if you own a Tesla in Lebanon right now? That would be pretty horrific. I mean, I just read an article on a side note. I don't know if you saw the news item about the Chechen warlord who got a Tesla Cybertruck, brought it over to Chechnya, bolted a gigantic weapon to the bed of this thing, and said that he was going to take it to Ukraine and use it in the war there. The only thing is, because it's a Cybertruck, Elon Musk dialed up the number of that Cybertruck and hit the smite button, and it went boo and turned into a giant paperweight. So it's no longer any good. And now that that warlord in Chechnya is pretty upset about the fact that his Cybertruck no longer wants to do any cybering or trucking, either one. So can you imagine if you're in Lebanon and it's kind of hot in here. Maybe we should turn on the air conditioner. No, let's just open a window. That kind of thing. I mean, the people are absolutely terrified to use anything electronic because it wasn't just beepers and walkie-talkies that were, just going into spontaneous rapid disassembly. They were having, barbecues spontaneously out of everything from, blenders, the little door locks that you swipe like on the hotel room door. Those things were going off. Solar panels, they say, were going off. All kinds of stuff. And if you read the New York Times article about this operation, some of the information is coming out about how it was planned. It appears that the Mossad has been planning this operation for more than 15 years. They've been salting these devices that were booby-trapped into the society in Lebanon. And when, I guess, apparently they had to make the decision to activate all of these devices a little earlier than they had planned. The idea was to activate them in the case of the breakout of a all-out war with Lebanon. And I've been doing some reading about them. I'm going to talk more about something called the Dahia Doctrine. But they had all of these things in place, and they had been putting them in place for many years. Now, you heard me talk about the fact that throughout their history, the Mossad has been known for taking everyday devices and making them just want to go boom. And, you know, that's the sound of freedom in in Mossad speak. They've used office chairs, they've used cars, they've used bicycles, they've used telephone handsets, they've used desks, all kinds of stuff that they've snuck in. And even, you know, before the digital age, before the advent of, you know, hacking and cyber warfare, they had been making a habit of making everyday items suddenly decide to erupt in flame over there in Lebanon, but never on this scale. Now, according to some of the information that's now coming out, the official head count of people who have actually met their maker because of these devices going off was like in the mid-30s. Again, 2 waves of these that have gone off, and something like 3,000 plus that were wounded. But there was a leaked document that came out from Hezbollah in Arabic that actually hints at, well, it actually says it outright, but we're not positive that this document is legit. But it hints that the actual death toll could be something like 900 people from this. Now, if you want to talk about how incredibly precise this operation was, they managed to sell these devices, the beepers especially, to people who were, I mean, this was intended to be replacements for cell phones for members of Hezbollah. And I mean, you don't get any more precise than that. Just imagine, I mean, you know, the left is making all kinds of claims that, oh my gosh, this is, you know, killing all kinds of children and everything like that, but it's not. It's not. There were a few perhaps that there's one in particular that was reported, one child that died, and that's a tragedy. However, imagine how many children might have been harmed if they had to do it the old-fashioned way by dropping 2,000-pound, freedom devices on top of Hezbollah, on top of their houses, on top of their places of work, on top of theর cars. What would have happened? How many of those, what do you want to call them? Like spontaneous complaint departments, the additions to the complaint department. These hellfires, JDAMs, whatever, the 2,000-pound devices that they have to drop on top of things to make them go boom. How many of those would they have had to employ to take out 900 people and wound 3,000? Like a lot. And what would the collateral damage have been if they had done it the old-fashioned way? It would have been much, much higher. So not only were they merciful in that these devices only wounded and did not, permanently take people off the battlefield, but it causes more hardship to those organizations that they're targeting, because for every one wounded guy, they've got to have a couple of other militants to carry him to the hospital and to take care of him. And it takes more of their resources to take care of a wounded guy than it does a guy that expired. Okay, so it was actually incredibly precise. I mean, this is unbelievable what happened. Now, Hassan Nasrallah said that he was going to give a speech today about this. And when he gave his speech, there were IAF airplanes in the sky doing very low passes over the spot where he's giving his speech, breaking the sound barrier, setting off flares, and basically causing chaos and confusion and fear among the people who were listening, just letting them know, we know where you are, and if we really wanted to, we could give you an express train to Smithereen Town anytime we want. They, again, as I have said in the last couple of days, if the IDF does not take advantage of this chaos, Hezbollah is in total disarray. They are completely in the dark with each other. They're resorting to smoke signals and carrier pigeons and all kinds of stuff to try to communicate with each other at this point. I mean, it's going to have to be literally guys on bicycles riding, a courier style to deliver messages now, because they're afraid of every electronic conveyance. And that is going to desperately slow down Hezbollah's response. Hassan Nasrallah came out and said, look, this is a declaration of war. This has crossed all red lines, and we will respond in kind. Well, good luck with that. All of this has caused the United States to put out a statement today urging all American citizens to leave the state of Lebanon post haste, to which I say, thank you very much, Captain Obvious. Like, we really needed the embassy to tell us it's time to leave to leave Israel at this point. But not only are they saying that, but the UK is getting all their citizens out. I mean, this document that was leaked that claimed that 900 guys met their maker because of this operation, like 160 of those were apparently from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps from Iran. And there were a lot of high-ranking people that apparently had one of those pagers. So they not only did they take those guys off the battlefield completely, but there were a lot of people that don't have trigger fingers left. There were a lot of people who don't have, their shooting eye left either. And so this is, talk about a psychological operation. This is the epitome of, asymmetric warfare. Asymmetric warfare being warfare by other means rather than sending in tanks and troops. But the tanks and troops are on their way. So the IDF put out today, Yoav Gallant made a statement that the primary focus of the war now has shifted as of today from Gaza to the north. They, as I mentioned the other day, they pulled out the 96th Brigade out of Gaza and they sent them up to join I forget what other brigade is up there. And so they've got 2 brigades at least in the north now. They are moving lots of armor into place. And there are some unconfirmed reports of actual cross-border skirmishes happening between Lebanon and Israel now. That would be the precursor to tanks rolling across the border and going in there. And according to reports that we're seeing, the War Cabinet has said that they believe that what most Israelis believe, and that is that it will require a buffer zone to be established inside Lebanon and held in perpetuity at this point by IDF troops in order to make it safe enough for people to return to their homes in the north. Now, to add insult to injury, Hezbollah decided to respond last night with a very large volley of, as again, we call those freedom tubes or, complaints, a very large volley of tubular complaints, let's say, into Israel. And Israel apparently they've still got people on the inside of Hezbollah. This is what's amazing. After all of that, you would think that Israel would have given up a lot of its ability to track Hezbollah and figure out where they are and what they're going to do. But no, because as Hezbollah was about to fire these tubular complaints at Israel, IAF aircraft came in and smoked those guys and took out another 100 or so tubes, which, as I mentioned before, you remember back a couple of weeks ago when Israel managed to preemptively strike Hezbollah and take out like thousands, they said 6,000 rockets on their tubes, right? What I said back then, and I'll say it again, is that they say that Hezbollah has something like 100 to 150,000 of these tubular complaints that they can send into Israel. And the problem is they don't have 150,000 tubes to fire them out of. And each one of those things requires a certain kind of launcher. Well, if they're taking out the launchers, if they've got 150,000 rockets, they probably have, I don't know, maybe it's probably 20 or 40 to 1 in terms of those things to launchers. So if they take out 100 launchers, they're really taking out something like the ability of 2,000 of the tubular complaints to be able to fly toward Israel. And the more launchers they take out, the less they have to worry about the rest, because that they can't shoot them without the launchers. So today they said another 100 launchers that were primed and ready to fire. But in the last 48 hours, not only that, they have also taken out a very large dump, an ammo dump, that had a whole bunch of the tubular complaints stored in it. So they've sent those up in smoke as well. So they are rapidly degrading Hezbollah's ability to prosecute violence against Israel. And that's exactly what they would want to do in advance of a movement into the country. So let me just see how many people we've got. We got almost 5,000 people online right now. So please hit the like button and share this. We've only got 889 likes. So let's get that number up, and that'll tell YouTube that a bunch of other people need to be hearing this information, and we'll get the word out. Denise asks when I'm going to Israel. I'll be there. I'll be in Israel, I know for sure, Lord willing, on October 5th. That's the soonest that I will be there right now. But also, as you know, because of the community standards problems and all that, getting videos demonetized and everything, it's not just about the money. It's about, if I get too many of strikes like that, they will just take the entire channel off the air, and we don't want that to happen. So it's not. I'm not just focusing on the money here, but the problem is, if I show you any video of the kind of things that I'm talking about, it will demonetize and get me in trouble with YouTube. So what I do is I take videos that show what I'm talking about, and I put them up over at chuckholton.com. So you can go over there and you can sign up for free, and you can see those videos on my chuckholton.com page. It's at locals. Don't freak out if it asks you to sign up for Rumble, because Rumble owns locals, and that's why, okay? But that's why I have to do it that way. We put them up over there, and that way you can see what I'm talking about. And for now, that's the best way I know of to do this. I've actually reached out to a bunch of other content creators who are in the same space I am, and we're all having the same problems. So it's not just me. They're having to deal with the same issues as well. Anyway, please, hit that like. No, we're up to 1,600 likes already. That's great. Thank you very much. We got 10,000 people that have watched the video so far, so fantastic. Now, let's talk about some more breaking news out of Israel. This is amazing. And again, I have to be careful with my language, so I'm going to ask, let's see. Somebody, the Shin Bet has arrested a 73-year-old Israeli man for going to Iran illegally, getting smuggled into Iran to meet with members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and they paid him money to try to help advance a scheme to take out Benjamin Netanyahu and some of the other leaders of the Israeli government. So they uncovered a plot that would have introduced Benjamin Netanyahu to, they were trying to punch his ticket, basically. Okay, very high stakes game of hide and seek, if you know what I mean. So this guy was 73 years old. He's an Israeli citizen. He's from Ashkelon, where I've spent a lot of time, right on the northern border of Gaza. And he was a businessman that traveled to Turkey a lot. He was apparently approached by somebody who introduced him to some Iranian guys. Long story short, they groomed him and then ended up pitching him trying to hire him to pass along weapons and money to other operatives that Iran already has inside Israel. That's not very exciting. And to help to advance one of these plots to introduce Benjamin Netanyahu to the Afterlife Express. So obviously this guy's in big trouble. He's saying, oh, thank you I'm so glad that you caught me because I really didn't want to do this. And he's fully cooperating with his, with the Shin Bet. His lawyer is saying, oh, well, he made a bad business decision. That's the understatement of the year, a bad business decision that is going to cost him probably prison for the rest of his life as a traitor. He says that he wouldn't have done it unless Iran agreed to give him $1 million up front. Like that makes it better. It's like, no, that's not good. You straight to jail. You go to jail right now. So that the other thing that tells us is that Iran is actively seeking people inside Israel to commit shenanigans against the IDF and the Israeli government. As a matter of fact, it goes along with another Shin Bet case that they picked up the other day that, oh, you guys are fine. Yeah, you can sit right there. Let's see if you're on camera. Yeah, you're just a little bit on camera, Gwen. It's all right. That's no problem. Here, I'll move this way a little bit. And then, so folks, for those of you that are just starting, this is our very first ever live studio audience. We have a bunch of viewers of the Hot Zone. Say hi, everybody. Hello. Yay. And they're all watching live here in my hotel room in Armenia because they joined us on this tour in Armenia. And why haven't you? Because we do these tours every year. We're going to do one in June next year, and we'll talk more about that later. So apparently the Shin Bet has uncovered other plots by Iran where they were creating these fake profiles on social media like Facebook and Instagram and all those kinds of things. And they usually featured some buxom IDF, female IDF soldier who was, trying to befriend people and then get them to do things that would lead them to compromising situations. That's how this works. You get them to compromise on something little, and then you hold that over their head and say, well, we wouldn't want the government to find out that you did that. And so now you have to do something even worse. And that's how they pull people into these things. But they did, sort of put a stop to one of those operations by Iran just recently, like back in July. And what that tells us is that Iran is very actively trying to recruit people, not just to take out, members of the government, but to take out Israeli citizens who are traveling overseas. So if you're an Israeli citizen, vacationing in Europe right now might be a little riskier than normal. And this is why I was really surprised when I came back to Israel, a month and a half ago, and I flew out of London on an El Al flight direct to Israel. The flight was full of families with kids. And this is right before they were saying that Iran was going to strike hard and have, the mother of all battles kind of thing. And I'm like, why are all these people bringing their kids back to Israel? And I started talking to some of them, and they said, it's more dangerous for us in London right now than it is in Israel. And because we're Jews and we just can't live there anymore. And so we've got to, they're all coming back to the land. So this is pretty amazing that they actually captured an Israeli citizen who was taking money to help advance some of these plots to hurt the Israeli government, the Israeli war effort, and Israeli citizens. So very bad. Now, wanted to talk about Israel's, so today, so last night, Hezbollah tried to fire hundreds of these, tubular complaints into Israel. And in the process, Israel found out or knew ahead of time, bombed them all and preemptively struck and kept that from happening and took out a whole bunch of Hezbollah's equipment. But today, they managed to successfully launch about 150 of these munitions into northern Israel from Jish, where I've spent a lot of time, and Mount Meron. The alarms went all the way across into the northern Golan Heights, and there were quite a few actually that got through because when they fire from the southeastern part of Lebanon, they're short range rockets. It's much harder for the Iron Dome to shoot them down because they fly low, and these things, if they try to shoot them down when they're very low, there's a better likelihood of the Iron Dome munitions causing damage on the ground as well. So a lot of them made their way through and caused some significant damage, but not a lot of injuries. There was an event where an anti-tank guided missile was fired from inside Lebanon at an IDF patrol, and it harmed about, I think, 4 Israeli soldiers. But this is, everything that we're seeing, this is what I'm trying to get at, everything that we are seeing right now points to a major on-the-ground offensive by the IDF into Lebanon within the next 48 hours, likely this weekend. Lloyd Austin, the Defense Secretary of the United States, has canceled his planned visit to Israel. They apparently don't want to be seen as, being there when this thing goes off because they don't want to look like they're involved. That probably answers the question that many of you have on whether or not the United States will get involved kinetically if this happens. They probably won't. The United States will likely continue to help in terms of intelligence, signals intelligence, especially with satellites and drones and things like that, helping Israel find threats and, find and fix threats so that they can eliminate them. They'll probably help with that, but you're not going to see American F-35s dropping, freedom fireworks on positions inside Lebanon. That's not going to happen. So Israel will have to do that part themselves. However, on the Lebanon side, Hezbollah is not going to be alone because, as it turns out, there were quite a few, like 150 Houthis, I guess, who were wounded in Operation Below the Belt, or what they call it, the Grim Beeper. They said instead of from the river to the sea, they're saying from the liver to the knees. So there were 150 Houthi fighters who were wounded in that operation because they had those devices on them inside Lebanon. So Hezbollah is getting augmented, their forces are getting augmented by fighters from Iraq, likely the Hashishabi, the Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria, put out a statement that if Israel takes out 1,000, Hezbollah fighters, they will send 100,000 in to replace them. So, I mean, that's probably hyperbole, but you get the point. On top of that, the Lebanese ambassador to London today gave a speech in which he all but directly said that in the case of an Israeli incursion into southern Lebanon, that the Lebanese army would join forces with Hezbollah to oppose them. Now, to anybody who's been following this stuff, that's not a real big surprise, since it's known that about half of the Lebanese army soldiers are moonlighting with Hezbollah. So that's not a big surprise. But what is significant about him saying that and saying it officially from the ambassador in the UK is that, if you remember from a previous live that I did, the United States gives the Lebanese army about $300 million a year in military aid. Like, are you kidding me? So the United States military equipment is likely going to be opposing our ally, Israel, if they go into Lebanon. You can't make this stuff up, folks. The United States is so good at fire hosing cash all over the whole world, like a drunken sailor trying to take a leak, that we fund both sides of everything. We fund everything. We've been traveling around Armenia over the last few days, and the Airbnb that we stayed at in a farming village way out in the remote eastern part of Armenia has a plaque on the wall that they were partially funded by a UN program that received $33 million from the United States government last year. An Airbnb in a farming village in Armenia. Why? What's that? I mean, for what? We stopped and saw a very interesting ancient cave today in the wine country of Armenia. And that cave is well developed with nice railings and stairs and, lighted path and all that, and a fence around it and everything. And I was waiting outside the fence for everybody to get done. And I'm reading the plaque on the fence, and it was funded with a $14 million grant from the United States ambassador to Armenia. He gets some pocket change to throw around Armenia every year. And so thank you very much. That's nice. I could go on and on with this, but it's just crazy to me that the United States is giving money, $300 million a year, to the Lebanese government, the Lebanese army, which is now going to be opposing Israel's attempts to create a safe space for its people. And not only that, we give another $300 million a year or so to the UNIFIL forces. That's the United Nations interim force in Lebanon, which has been there since 1973, with their only job to stop all this from happening, to keep Hezbollah from attacking Israel. And they've failed miserably at that, but we keep funding them. It's just mind-boggling to me how much money the United States spends on that. And we complain about giving money to Ukraine? I mean, good grief. Okay, so let me just calm down for a second. I want to mention we got over 6,000 people online. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel here. That makes a big difference, and it helps keep us on the air, and it doesn't cost you anything. Just take your little finger and go over there and boop, just hit that little subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and then you won't miss any of these lives. That makes me happy, makes you happy. Everybody's happy. My wife gets happy. If she's happy, we're all happy. Okay? So please hit the subscribe button, and also go to chuckholton.com, and you can see more of what we're talking about over there that I can't show you on YouTube. So just for those people that are gone. Now, this is the most egregious thing I want to talk about in today's live. This is the thing that really, really makes my blood boil, and I think it should make yours boil as well. The United Nations voted today, or yesterday, on a motion that was put forward by, who turned the TV on? It just randomly turned on over there. That's nice. I got to be careful because it'll demonetize me if there's stuff on there yeah, you can turn it off. It's fine. So the United Nations voted on this motion that was see, look at that. It's like automatically turned on. There we go. Voted on this motion that was put forward by the Palestinian Authority, which was given an observer seat in the United Nations. I mentioned before that the only other entity that is a non-state actor that has this kind of observer role at the UN is the Vatican. So if you compare, let's see, the Holy Catholic Church and a bunch of extremists over here with the Palestinian Authority, I don't see really what they have in common. But they have been given the authority. Now, they can't vote on these things, but they can put forward motions to the United Nations. And this is not the UN Security Council where the United States or one of the other nations that are part of the Security Council could veto the motion. This is before the full UN. They took it to a full vote, and they overwhelmingly voted in favor of this motion that was put forward by the Palestinian Authority. Now, what did that motion say? It's as egregious as you can imagine. It said that Israel must immediately cease all hostilities against Gaza and Judea and Samaria and the Hebron, and must pull all forces out. And basically, they can no longer defend themselves against the Palestinians in any way, shape, or form. And oh, by the way, the 800,000 Israelis who live in Judea and Samaria legally must be relocated. They must give up their homes, leave everything, and be relocated into the pre-1967 borders of Israel. And they must then Israel must fund and pay for the building of a Palestinian state inside Judea and Samaria and the Hebron. Judea being, the land of the Jews. That's where Judea came from, right? And they call it the occupied West Bank. Well, the reason they call it that is because calling it Judea sort of makes it obvious that the Jews belong there. And like I say, there are 800,000 Jews who live in Judea, Samaria, and Hebron legally, and again, legally according to the laws of the country that they're in, which is Israel. And they're not illegally occupying that area. They're legally there. The United Nations says that they're there illegally, but what would you say if the United Nations told you that you couldn't have your hunting rifle in the state where you live in the United States, where you're legally allowed to own it by the laws of your state and of the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, but the United Nations just arbitrarily said, we're going to declare it to be illegal for you to have your hunting rifle. You'd be like, what do I care what the United Nations says? I didn't vote for those people. And that's exactly what this is in Judea, Samaria, and the Hebron, is this unelected body that has nothing to do with making laws inside Israel is arbitrarily declaring that the 800,000 Jews who live in those regions are there illegally. And therefore, the media jumps on that and calls it the illegally occupied West Bank. But it's not. Okay? So this resolution that was put forward by the Palestinians says that all of those Jews have to move out of Judea, Samaria, and the Hebron in the next 12 months. And then the Jews, from their tax dollars, have to pay to completely rebuild Gaza and rebuild all the infrastructure that is required to create a Palestinian country. Okay? Now, to say that that's a non-starter in Israel would be ludicrous. It's beyond that. It is absolutely ridiculous. So if you're wondering what kind of teeth this resolution has, it has about as much teeth as a 101-year-old grandmother, and they really cannot do anything to enforce it. Now, the sad part about this, the thing that really makes it egregious, is that 124 nations voted in favor of this resolution, and only 14 nations voted against it. Now, does that just make your blood boil? What I want to know is, well, a lot of people say, well, who are the 14 nations that voted against it? The only one that really counts is the United States, because the rest of them are literally like Tuvalu and Vanuatu and like the Marianas Islands. I mean, it's like little islands out in the middle of nowhere. And the Czech Republic was one that voted against it. I think Hungary did. But as a matter of fact, I have the list here. Let's pull that up. Thank you, Brian, for putting the list up on the chat so I could pull it up quick. Let's see where it is here. I'll just go through the ones that voted against it. So Argentina, Czech Republic, Fiji, Hungary, Israel, of course, duh, Malawi, Micronesia, Nauru, Palau, Papua New Guinea. You see why I say, like, what in the world? Like, why all these? I'm very glad that all these tiny little islands out in the middle of the Pacific support Israel, but why don't the rest of them? Paraguay, that one's more significant, Tonga, Tuvalu, and the United States. That's it. Those are the only ones that voted against it. Now, 43, I think, nations abstained, which is a pretty cowardly thing to do. Panama is one of those. I'm very disappointed in the country where I live. What are you hoping to gain by wimping out and not taking a stand? Because by not taking a stand, these countries really are taking a stand against Israel. Liechtenstein, Lithuania, Costa Rica, Croatia, Congo, Denmark, Ecuador, Dominican Republic, Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, Romania. Interestingly enough, well, not interesting, not surprisingly, countries like Russia and China, all those voted for this resolution. But if you are from a different country, Australia, where did Australia vote? They abstained. Again, very cowardly of Australia. Sorry, Bev. I hate to say that. We have an Australian here in the group, but it just makes my blood boil that, number one, they would give this unelected group, the non-state actors, they're just like the poster children of spoiled, rotten brats who have gotten nothing but free money from the world body, billions of dollars a year, a lot of that coming from the United States taxpayer, and they've used it only to foment their hatred against Israel. They have not used it to improve the lives of their own people in any way, shape, or form. And they are given a seat where they can bring forward these ridiculous motions to the absolutely toothless United Nations. And it just lets you know how far the United Nations has fallen. You know that United Nations was instrumental in the creation of the state of Israel. And now look how far they've fallen. It's just sickening. It's absolutely sickening. Okay, so I'm going to go answer a few questions. And so if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. Put the word question and then write your question in all caps. That'll make it easier for me to see. If I can scroll through these real quick and see if I can find a few. Was that one? We'll agree WHO proposals. It's election year. That's why. Yeah, okay. At least, now somebody asked today, this is a real good question that one of the people in our group asked, why does the United States stand by Israel in the United Nations, but then throw Israel under the bus every other chance it gets? Very good question. And the best answer I can come up with is because in reality, the current administration in the United States does not like Israel, and they desperately want this conflict to be over so that they can take credit for it before the election. They want to use it as a campaigning tool to try to get reelected. and they're very upset that Israel has not gone along with them and used the United States method of ending a war by just losing it, by just pulling out and saying we're going to leave our toys and go home. And Israel said, no, that doesn't work for us. And so they're very angry about that. So they really would not support Israel, except for the fact that 40% of the donations that come into the Democratic Party come from Jews, come from American Israelis. And they can't afford to alienate all those people. Now they are. It appears some of the recent polling that's coming out shows that there are many Jews who are starting to move away from the Democratic Party because they're so sickened by watching them flip-flop on this and do everything they can to keep Israel from being able to do what it has to do to finish the conflict, to end the suffering of its people and the people in Gaza, by the way. And they have, not said anything about the other conflicts around the globe, but they continue to bash Israel for everything it does to try to make its people safe. All the while, it's pretending to stand by Israel in the United Nations. That's the best answer I can come up with for that question. Okay, all right. So I'm going to Operation No Fingers. Do you think that this will lead to the fulfilling of the destruction of Damascus prophecy? I don't know. I'm not that good on prophecy, so I'm going to leave that to other, other pundits. There's lots of YouTube channels out there that can tell you about prophecy. But I do want to talk about they struck today and took out several Hezbollah leaders in a Hezbollah stronghold known as Dahia. Sorry. It's a suburb of Beirut. And Dahia actually goes all the way back to the history there. It's kind of a slum in southern Beirut that has been a Hezbollah stronghold for many years. And it gained notoriety during the 2006 Lebanon war when Israeli forces implemented what they called the Dahia Doctrine. And that is that if we are getting attacked by somebody out of that area, then we are going to go in and destroy infrastructure in that area to make it harder for them to attack us out of that. And they were roundly criticized for that because it's got pretty severe humanitarian implications if you go in and start destroying buildings and taking out bridges and power infrastructure and stuff like that. But it does kind of make sense from a tactical standpoint that if you're being attacked out of this neighborhood, that you should go in there and ruin a few things in that neighborhood to maybe, dissuade them, maybe make them think twice about, using that as a base of operations. And so they struck in that neighborhood again just today, and they have been taking out leadership in targeted drone strikes across Lebanon and into Syria over the last several days. So they continue to try to basically nibble from both ends on Hezbollah to cut off the heads of the snake and to take out the foot soldiers as well through Operation Below the Belt. So Operation Missing Fingers, whatever you want to call it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out my other microphone and we're going to, can we turn on the lights over there? Right behind you, bud. There we go. Turn on these lights and we're going to turn the camera around and we're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to take a live Q&A from our studio audience over here. Let's hear it for Team Safety Third. Okay. And let's wait for this microphone to catch up over here and see if, there we go. Who's got a question or a comment, wants to say something? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but what do you think about okay, Andy, you got something? No. Oh, you don't? John? Anybody? Come on, raise your hands. Don't be shy. Come on. Okay, Bev, pass that over to Bev so she can use the microphone. Okay. This is Bev from Australia.
With the focus now more on the north, and I know there will still be troops down in Gaza, but what do you think that this all means for the hostages?
Say it a little louder for me. I'm half deaf, remember?
It's not coming through hardly at all.
It's not. Let me turn this up. Okay. I'll turn that up. Okay. Yeah, okay. There you go.
So with the focus now shifting to the north, what is that going to mean for the hostages in Gaza?
Very good question. Very good question. Okay, just set it on the desk, and then anybody else that's got a question can pick it up or a comment or anything. Okay. To answer that question, she's asking, what is the effect going to be on Gaza? And I would say that they are not pulling all the troops out of Gaza, so they're not finished there. But they, I think, had to step up the time frame for going into Lebanon because they were afraid that these devices that they've been implanting inside Lebanon for 15 years were starting to be discovered. And if they got discovered, that whole operation would have just been for nothing. And apparently there were very vociferous conversations in the war cabinet about whether or not they should activate all these devices and initiate Operation Grim Beeper. But in the end, they decided that they should do it and they should go ahead with it and move up their plans to go into Lebanon. And so that's why they're kind of, I think it looks to me like the IDF is kind of scrambling to get things in place to get this done. I don't think that means they're going to stop in Gaza. According to the United States, a report I just saw that came out in the last 2 days, the United States negotiators, the ceasefire negotiators, have said they don't believe that Hamas is serious about negotiating for a ceasefire. And so because of that, they don't see there being a ceasefire in Gaza anytime between now and January or even next spring. And that does not bode well for the people that are still being held hostage in Gaza. But as I have been saying all along, those people did not stand a very good chance to begin with. And I think Israel is trying to be pragmatic about the fact that if we don't deter this and deter it but good from ever happening again, if we give up in order to get back these hostages, we are dooming a lot of other Israelis to become hostages in the future. And so while we don't want to leave anybody behind, and it is important to us to get those people out, maybe taking the pressure off of Gaza just a little bit will enable us to, now, we have found out, Bev, that the IDF has been emplacing a lot of sensors all over Gaza in these operations. And then when they pull out of those locations with their troops and the Palestinians come back in, they are able to glean a lot more information out of that than they were before. And so what they're probably hoping, this is a guess on my part, what's that light? It's somebody, I think it's the that thing there. No? It's I don't know, a light is flashing. Anyway, what I hope that means is that they are taking the pressure off of Gaza a little bit so that they can gather more information and possibly find the locations of some of these hostages in order to send in, rescue teams and try to do it that way. Because the conventional approach is not going to work. That's what they found with this most recent tragedy where 6 of the hostages lost their lives because conventional forces got too close to them and they just took them out. And so to try a different tack is smart, and let's hope that it is effective. But that's a guess on my part. I'm not sure. Anybody else have a comment? Yes, go ahead, Amy. Take the microphone there. And hold it real close here, okay? Amy over here on the floor, okay?
Well, I just was wondering if you could clarify on what they voted on today, because I didn't quite understand. So the existing state of Israel, how would that affect what they're voting on? Are they asking them to give up that whole area?
Yes, and they are. Okay, so put that back on the table. Just to clarify, the UN voted today on a resolution that was put forward by the Palestinian Authority, and that resolution stated that Israel must give up and completely leave all of the areas that they took in 1967. So they've had for 57 years or 58 years. they have to give up Judea, Samaria, and Hebron, which is the West Bank. All of that is the West Bank. And they not only have to give it up, they have to move all of the Israelis who live there out of the area, and they have to pay to develop it into its own country. So, I mean, how ridiculous is that? I mean, like, huh? Well, and that they won't, of course, they're not going to. She says, what if they don't? Nothing, because there is no enforcement mechanism. But what this also called upon the UN countries to do is to refrain from selling any weapons or technology to Israel that could be used against Palestinians. So basically, it forbade Israel from defending itself anymore, which is preposterous. I mean, it's insane. And so it's a non-starter without a doubt. Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead, bud. Grab the mic. And you have to look for the little grill on there and talk into the grill. Don't push the yellow button. But.
Okay, just a quick question. In your opinion, do you think that the U.S. will follow that UN agreement by not providing weapons that could kill?
Okay, good question. Good question, bud. No, I don't think that the U.S. will adhere to that agreement because the U.S. voted against it. So the U.S. won't. Their stance won't be affected by this, except for it will likely be used by members of the squad who, obviously they're going to latch onto anything that will give them the opportunity to bash Israel. And it'll be latched onto by other leftist, liberal members of the government to call for the United States government to divest from, not only, this is not just divesting from selling them weapons, but divest from buying anything from Israel that they might use the funds for to defend themselves. So it's part of that BDS movement, the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement that's been pushed on liberal agendas, campuses, college campuses, and stuff like that for many years. The BDS movement has been around for a long time. So it's just another statement by that. Anybody else? Andy?
Yeah, I guess this is more primary. How can the UN even assume to supersede the sovereignty of a nation?
It's a really good question. Well, they don't supersede the sovereignty of a nation, obviously, but they would love to. And here's what I see happening with this. The United Nations passes all these resolutions, and they don't get adhered to. People ignore them. And then the UN is going to use that as an excuse to call for the UN to be given more power to actually enforce these things. And this is in my opinion, a straight line path to the end times, the one world government, the one world currency, and all that kind of stuff. To me, it looks like if you extrapolate the direction that these organizations are heading, where they are, putting into place like the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, and they are trying to give themselves the ability to force nations to do things that they want them to do. They include all the rogue nations in the world practically, Russia and China and stuff. They all have a vote. It's insane. But this puts them on a direct path. If you just extrapolate the direction they're going to a one world government and a one world currency where we all have to abide by these things. And obviously, if you vote for the wrong people in the United States, that could very well happen in the U.S., I think, if we are not careful. Okay? Anybody else? Go ahead. Grab the mic there. Lachlan? Yep. He's Canadian, so if you don't understand I'll translate for you.
My question would be, how could we see Turkey being quite involved in the next few months, causing more conflicts?
Are you talking about involved kinetically or involved just in any way?
Yeah, just in general, like
Okay, good question. So Turkey has been making lots of noises. President Erdogan being full Muslim Brotherhood, which is essentially ISIS, right? He has been calling for violence against Israel. He's been standing up and supporting the extremist networks that are opposing Israel, and has even been threatening to send Turkish troops to assist Hezbollah and Hamas and those organizations. Now, there's a reason why he probably won't follow through on those, and that's because they are a part of NATO. And that would potentially be a catalyst if the right person got into office in the United States for president next time. That could be a catalyst for opting to remove Turkey from NATO. Now, the United States couldn't do that unilaterally in theory, but in practice, all the United States would have to do would be to forbid any United States soldier, diplomat, anybody from having anything to do with Turkey, and to ostracize them in connection with the with NATO. And it would essentially cut them off from NATO by doing that. So I doubt they will do anything, but they certainly have been talking like they would, or they would like to. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, let's have somebody tell us about the tour and how you've liked what we've seen so far, and give us, the people who might be interested in coming to Armenia, a sense of what the tour with us has been like. Anybody? Everybody's like, no, you don't want to know.
Well, first of all, you got to realize Chuck's a ranger, so everything you're going to do is to the extreme. But this has been a fantastic experience. The people of Armenia are fantastic. That they have been a Soviet satellite and are now independent, and yet still depending on old reliances. And yet they're the earliest Christian nation in the world from 301. When you put all that together and then you get to walk in these shoes, I mean, we were right at the foot of Mount Ararat today. And when you think of Noah and the flood, and then see all the flood evidence all throughout Armenia, it's just an amazing trip. And Chuck and Connie do a great job of putting it all together. We're all thankful for them for
That's
that.
great. Thank you.
And the rest of their family that's here.
Yeah.
It's been a great time.
Yeah. We've been,
I think I can speak for everybody in that this is life-changing in many different ways. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well, it's been really fun having everybody, and it is kind of life-changing. I mean, has it given you a new sense of, like, if you support Israel for all the reasons that you should support Israel, that make you want to support Armenia as well, because they're facing many of the same issues, but surrounded by enemies. They're a small country. Everywhere they look is people that want to destroy them. And, again, being a Christian nation, if you're a Christian, then we ought to support our brothers and sisters here. And it's really cool that we've been able to bring in people who have been directly affected by the wars and the aggression from Azerbaijan and Turkey here in Armenia, and let you get to know them personally, hear their stories, and even help them directly. And that's, to me, the coolest part about this. What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anybody else have a comment or anything? Okay, Amy?
I'm a little hesitant, but I just was struck by when Aram told us, in one of our conversations, he spoke about Turkey on one side, Azerbaijan on the other side, Iran, I think in the middle, kind of down below, and how they're trying to just, they've taken over portions of Armenia, and they really want to take it all out to make it just Muslim country all the way. And that's so tragic.
Yeah. Especially when you get to know these people personally.
Oh, and the people
I mean,
are
last
beautiful.
night we met, we stayed with a family and had dinner at their house in the eastern province of Syunik in Armenia. And they, the husband, Samver, was born in that house. His father was born there. His grandfather was born there. His family's been there for 150 years. And, to get to know them and to see that history in the walls of their house, and then think that they might have to flee and leave everything behind, it really personalizes these conflicts, doesn't it? When you start to meet these people and get to love them because they're just such sweet people. And to imagine them having to do that. I mean, there were a lot of people, as we were talking about it last night, that had tears in their eyes. That it was just really an emotional time. Anybody else?
I was going to say, this is the quietest this group's been.
Yeah. There's Connie over there moderating.
Yeah, just in addition to everything, I totally resonate with everything everybody else has said. But on top of that, this tour, the scenery here has just been incredible. I mean, we've gone to some amazing places. We've got to do some amazing hikes and treks up to some monasteries and remote places that I've never been on a tour or anything like this, and just really thank Chuck and Connie and their family.
But I mean, you've been on tours before, right? Just not like
absolutely.
this tour.
Yeah, it's like an Israel bus ride.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, move this way.
Yeah.
It's not like that with Chuck. It's fun. He has, as you know, a great sense of humor, and he keeps us going all the time, keeps us moving, and just been having a great time.
Okay.
Beans, too.
Well, say again.
Look, you shucked beans.
Oh yeah, you got to shuck beans last night and help out. I have no idea what's wrong with my camera and why it's flickering like that, but hopefully it's not too distracting. Let's see what kind of comments we got here. What do you guys think of our panel here? Okay, it's a Ranger tour. Somebody's laughing at that one. Question, did Armenia in fact vote in favor of the UN resolution that you were just speaking of? Did you guys see that? Yes, Armenia did. They voted in favor of the resolution. And let me explain that just a little bit, because Armenia has been very upset with Israel since the 2020 war here, because Armenia got attacked by Azerbaijan and by Turkey. And this was a very small country of 2.5 million, and being attacked by Azerbaijan, who has an army that's 5 times larger than theirs, and Turkey, which has the 8th largest military in the world. And so they lost, and lost badly. They had 5,000 men that lost their lives in that battle here in Armenia. It was like a whole generation of young men. And it's just tragic what happened. The Israelis did not support Armenia in that. As a matter of fact, they sold weapons to Azerbaijan. Now, as I've told many Armenians, Israel didn't think twice about, they didn't give 2 thoughts to Armenia when they sold weapons to Azerbaijan. The reason that they partnered with Azerbaijan is because Azerbaijan is an adversary of Iran, Israel's main enemy. And so the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so the Israelis supported Azerbaijan in order to put pressure on Iran, okay? And an unfortunate byproduct of that support was that Armenia suffered by the hand of Israeli weapons. Israel also gets some natural gas and petroleum products from Azerbaijan as well. Now, that has changed in the recent past because Azerbaijan was one of those who voted to recognize the Palestinian state when it doesn't actually exist. And so when that happened, Israel started to consider the error of their ways in supporting this extremist Muslim country who is every bit as brutal as Hamas or Hezbollah, at least has been in terms of what they've done to the Armenian people. And so this is one of those things why I always say that that a country or a people or an individual should think about the moral implications of your decisions first and then about the practical implications or the political implications or the economic implications. You should never let the political ramifications of a choice outweigh a moral decision to do the right thing. Okay? And unfortunately, Israel has made a mistake in that by supporting Azerbaijan over Armenia. But two wrongs don't make a right. And right now, Armenia is making the wrong decision in terms of their stance against Israel. And it saddens me to see that, because Armenia and Israel, again, both facing very similar circumstances, surrounded by Muslim enemies that want to annihilate them. They should be standing arm in arm together and supporting one another, at least from a moral standpoint, and they're not. And that's sad for Armenia, it's sad for Israel, and I think they're both on the wrong side of history in this as well, okay? So anybody else have a comment? Go ahead.
Well, I just want to add, since the tour started, I've been reading through Psalms 120 to 134, and they're the Psalms of the Ascent. And I would highly recommend anybody thinking about going on this would look at those Psalms and realize that you're going to be doing a lot of ascenting here. And the main gist of all of those Psalms, there's 15 of them, and there's 15 steps going up to the temple. When you realize that they're there to really get closer to God, I think this tour, the main theme of it is the same.
Well, and that's what we hope for, is that you will not only come to understand Armenia, but you will come to understand your own faith better by coming to this other holy land, so to speak, here in Armenia. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. I think we are about out of time. As a matter of fact, we're probably over time now. Yep, we're 11 minutes over. So we're going to cut it right there. Why don't we say a prayer together for Armenia and for Israel, and then we'll be done. All right? Let's pray. Lord God, I just come to you right now, and I thank you that you have a plan, that you are sovereign God over all the plans of men. You are sovereign over politics. You're sovereign over economies. You're sovereign over relationships. And everybody watching this, either here or at home, you know, we're all fighting a battle that nobody else knows about, but you know, Father. So you see not only those big global geopolitical battles that are happening, but you see the battle that's happening right inside our own hearts. And I pray that you would just convict each one of us and how we're being passive, how we can fix the challenges that we have by relying on you more. And when we rely on you, we get closer to you. We do ascend closer to God, and we get to know you better. And that ultimately is the will, is your will for us. Your will for us has a lot less to do with what job we have or where we live or anything like that, and has a lot more to do with how we learn more about your nature and your character and your love for our fellow man. So I pray, Lord, that you would be sovereign over these geopolitical conflicts, these wars and disasters we see all around the world. We know that you're sovereign over those. We pray that you would bring peace, that you would bring comfort to those who are hurting, and that you would be God to those people who cry out to you. You'd be everything that they need, no matter what that is. But we also pray, Lord, that you would draw us closer to you through the hardships that we embrace and the hardships that you bring into our lives. Help us to learn to trust you more. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, folks, thank you so much for being here and being a part of our very first ever live studio audience here on the Hot Zone. And for those of you back at home, be sure you like and subscribe to the podcast. And if you have questions, you can always reach me at hotzoneholton@gmail.com. Reach out to me specifically if you'd like to be in this group next time that we come to Armenia. And so thank you very much for watching. God bless you. We'll see you again next time.